Welcome to Montana Whiskey, Wealth, and Freedom.
Well, I've been in love, I've been on the ground, I've gotten back on my feet, just to fall back down on my knees for you and your whiskey under the bridge.
Well, we should remind people of what Flip the Flow is about conceptually. Would you like to take that?
I don't know. That's your show name, man.
I putting you on the spot. Now, remember with the first show that we did together, we started it on getting kind of a table agreement around the premises that, if 97% of the wealth was, or if all the wealth was distributed around the globe, 97% of it would fall into 3% of the hands of people within 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So there is whether we like it or not, systemically, there's a natural flow of the way, I almost said water, money flows into, or circulates in the system. Mm-hmm. And so the premise of Flipping the Flow is to discuss and explore concepts that allows us the opportunity to reverse that flow for the people that want it and qualify.
Keep more cash flow.
No, I think that's awesome. I guess maybe just playing a little bit of devil's advocate for that right now.
Play devil's advocate? Come on, man.
That's a big shock. Is it more important to try to figure out how to flip the flow, or is it to try to figure out how to change our position within that? If 97% of all the wealth, if all the wealth was dispersed between everybody and 97% of it ended up in 3% of the people's hands, I would, rather than try to change that paradigm, I would rather just become that 3%. 3%. So how do we do that? And that comes into, rather than changing systems and the way that America or even the world economy works, we're changing our mindset, we're changing our position and bettering ourselves to be able to take advantage of what's naturally happening.
I'm smiling because I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit to my show notes, and I'm just gonna touch real quick on one of the things I was gonna mention. And one of the many things that I dig about you, just the way that you think, and it's pretty cool, especially how young you are. It's pretty rare too, I think. But anyway,
I don't know. Thank you.
So in one of the other things about this show is that talking about the new frontier of financial advocacy. What the heck does that mean? What's the new frontier? What is that all about? What do you mean when you say financial advocacy? Well, specifically the new frontier, I think, is really, I really am trying to make the content of the show relatable in a kind of more of a story fashion. And so to do that, it is to try to draw a parallel between the journey or the saga of the Dutton family, which is of course fictional, starting in 1883 all the way through to what everybody is so wildly crazy and popular is the Yellowstone show. But the premise of the Dutton story is that it's all about legacy, and the thing I like about it is, in my notes, is legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you teach others to continue. Every generation of Duttons had to fight for what they built. But then I underlined, and this is relevant to what you just said, for the rest of us in the real world, legacy isn't necessarily a ranch like it is in the Dutton story. It's a mindset, it's structure, and it's control. So I think, go back to what you said about the whole mindset concept.
Of becoming one of the 3% who gets it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was mine. I'm right about that, right?
Yeah.
I remember that correctly. You made the comment, or you used the word specifically, mindset. Mm-hmm. How do you change people's mindset to think and act more like the 3%, rather than just change the system, or both?
Zig Ziglar said it really well. He said, you put in garbage, you're going to get out garbage, right? What we put into our mind is essential. I don't know how you change your mindset without changing the things that are going into it. And so for that, what I've always gone back to is, what am I reading? What am I surrounding myself with? Who am I surrounding myself with? What is the inputs that's happening on a regular basis? It was funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and he does a lot of social media stuff, and that's what he does for business. And we were talking about screen time. And my screen time is a solid 3 hours and 30 minutes daily average, which is very low compared to normal. And he said, well, why is that? I'm like, because I don't want whatever's on my screen to be in my mind. Like, I want what's on the pages of these books that I choose. And I know if I open those things on my phone, they're designed to be addicting. They're designed to funnel you in a certain direction. And I think that's where 97% of the people fall, is entering into the systems that have been designed to carry you along a certain path. My mentor says frequently, dead fish are the only ones that go with the flow. And if you want to change your mindset, you've got to intentionally cut out those things that are causing you to continue thinking the same way, and get out of that comfort zone to start thinking differently.
Well, I would say that falls very much 100% in line with our whole concept around the new frontier.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be able to think differently, to endure, or to make different choices, and to choose a different journey that is not just being a dead fish.
It's interesting because my mentor is always saying, when he goes back
You
and
guys all
forth in
have
our
mentors. I don't have a mentor. I'm jealous.
We need to get you one. He always says that mindset, skill set. And so we're constantly going back and forth depending on which, each week, between getting the right mindset and getting the right skill set that allows us to actually play out that mindset. So once we make the decision of the things we want in our lives, what we're going to put value on in our own lifestyle, then it's coming up with the skills, or, whatever it happens to be, tools, perhaps, to help us actually fill that out.
Mm-hmm. If nothing comes before the mindset.
Right. Exactly. Because we were just having a conversation yesterday, 2 days ago, about the whole idea of one of the biggest things that people have as a challenge. I don't care where you are in your life. Like, obviously, if we could all get the 25-year-old, the 30-year-old who, finally has money coming in and we can help them figure out what to do with that, like, awesome. But it doesn't really actually matter where you are in your life. We can help you. But first you have to know where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know where you want to go, we can't help you get there. No. And if you're just playing along with the Joneses, well, I don't know, everybody else wants this, so I guess I want that too. Or, I don't know, I work and therefore there's this 401k thing and I just put money there and I'm sure I'm fine. Well, okay, maybe we should actually look at your goals, actually look at with where you are. But that's the part that people get so lost in. They never bother to actually understand their own mind.
Yeah. So I guess that would lead me to a question for you guys. If you're having a conversation with somebody and they are looking to change their mindset, or maybe you were in a spot in life where you were trying to change your mindset, what would be a book that you would recommend to somebody saying, hey, go here to start thinking differently? The
one I would have them start with is 4,000 Weeks.
4,000 Weeks?
Yep, by Oliver Bruckman. And the reason why is because all of a sudden it makes you stop doing the kick the can down the road of, well, I don't have to worry about that today. Or of course I can fit it all in, or I'm just going to do it all. It will make you, the premise of the book is that basically if you live to the average age, you have 4,000 weeks to live. And so depending on how far along you are, like us, we're in that second half of that, you go, okay, I have way less than that weeks. Gosh, I better get really serious about how I actually want to spend them. Because so many people just end up they let life happen to them instead of choosing how they want it to play out. And for me, that's the mindset that'll wake you up and go, dang, really seriously, I have to let go of the notion I can do it all. I'm never going to be able to. I'm never going to be able to learn to play piano and learn to do this and be the best mom and be blah, blah, blah. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So get your priorities straight and figure out today, tomorrow, next year, next 10 years, next 30 years, exactly what you want. Understanding that you'll review that, I hope, at least once a year and see where it needs to adjust. But like that's, to me, a really good starting point. Do you have one?
Well, I was thinking about that while you were talking, and it's not going to seem relevant, although it's relevant to me. I would say I'm a big, I'm almost reluctant to say this just because it's going to seem so
You
off
can edit
base.
it out.
Huh?
You can edit it out.
Yeah.
That's true. I love one of my favorite books is the Making of America by the National Center for Constitutional Studies. I think I have that right. And the reason why that's important to me is because I think that it very much falls in line with, it's very different from what you guys are talking about as far as on an individual level, what you put in, from a personal development standpoint. But I like to kind of look at things I've always been a very kind of 30,000 foot, big picture, big high level, high altitude type thinker. And so when I look at the world and life and things, I think I think I try to think of what we could have based on what was given to us that we have not utilized properly. And I think by understanding that and what our role is in it, I think it allows us to start kind of understanding how we matter in regard to that story, of that bigger picture story. And I think if we could identify with that more clearly, more at a more intelligent level, then we can start making different choices, and we could start seeing ourselves and serving a bigger role, which also then would put us in position to organically become more of the 3%, because we would accept more personal responsibility. We'd take more agency over our lives. We would understand the autonomy that we have in the system or the world that we're supposed to live in. And it would allow us to become, I think, more of a leader in our own world, whatever that world looks like for you. So, and that's a lead by example thing. I think that's why I'm so drawn to that content or that information, because I think it was such a remarkable point in time historically that if we would just choose to aspire to live more at a higher level that way, and enough people did that, it would create a much better, different outcome for everyone involved.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because what you just explained is exactly what Karen was talking about, right? Like, you're talking about, where do I fit in the bigger picture? She's saying 4,000 weeks. Where do I land right now, as opposed to my whole life and the picture of that, right? Leading by example. You can't lead by example if you don't have the bigger picture in mind. So don't sell yourself short, John. Like, every one of us gets our inspiration from different sources. And I think that's what's cool about us as humans, is we're unique, and there's different things that speak to us. This base moonshine might speak to us versus honey might speak to us, right? Like, everyone has their own preferences for the way that they learn, they grow, they be inspired. What's important is knowing that, leaning into it, and then speaking from it with confidence. So,
What would be your book?
I would say the first book that ignited me was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, cliche. But the one that changed my paradigm more than anything else is Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash, like, by far. And I keep going back to that one. Obviously, that's a trade book that I now teach people, so it may be silly to say that, but I've seen the people who embrace that book start thinking like owners and stop thinking like consumers. That difference moves you from 97 to 3%. It changes the way that you think about things. It changes your mindset completely. So that's one that I generally will recommend to people. And if it, man, I could keep going about books because there's been a lot that changed
Me
my
too.
life. But
I love books.
Well, one of the things that you and I talked about the first time we met last year, whenever that was, for lunch, we were both referencing a lot of like the Mises Institute type, subject matter and the various authors, whether it was Mises himself or, Murray Rothbard or,
right.
But I want to try to tie in what we're talking about because I'm actually curious what you think about this. So preface it by, Karen mentioned already, I think it was yesterday, we set up our camcorder on our deck at home and it was a beautiful day and we sat out in the sunshine and enjoyed, our wonderful, piece of heaven where we live. And we were having a conversation around legacy. And one of the things we talked about was that I made the comment to Karen about, although I think we both kind of came to the same agreement, but we have a little bit different opinion on legacy itself. But we were both very much in agreement that there's a difference between estate, inheritance, and legacy. Estate is right, like that's a physical manifest, a construct of something that you actually pass along to the next generation, and that is what represents that inheritance. But legacy is, to me, I think it deserves and needs to be stripped out of those two concepts or words, and it needs a standalone conversation because legacy just means so much more. And we got it was very interesting because we took very different positions on the concept of legacy, and neither one of us were right, neither one of us were wrong, because it was a little bit more elusive because it's an intangible term or more of an intangible concept in regard to what we talked about. Where I was, Karen was actually very much in her mind discussed her feelings around legacy as kind of more of a memories, emotional components that you live your life while you're alive. There are certain things that you do, choices you make, actions you take that dictate or that generate memories for your family, for yourself, for those people that you ultimately that are going to exist beyond your life. And that is a legacy that you want to really pay attention to because that's important. And there's a lot of things that we learn that we get from our parents, unfortunately good and bad.
I wish we could only take the good.
But Karen specifically was really feeling very passionate about the things that her parents have given to her that will be part of their legacy that you can't put your fingers on,
Right.
And I was taking a very different position or stance. And where I was saying that to me, legacy, one of the things that frustrates me is that we have, and I think this ties into a little bit about what you have tried to do with your work and create Tailwind is, one of the things that really, because we've been involved in infinite banking concept for 20 plus years. And, but until you said this to me, which seems so funny, but when you made the comment about, just getting people to adopt the infinite banking concept from a policy standpoint, that's not the ultimate goal. The goal is how do they use it once they have it? And I was like, woo, like light bulb moment. I was like, that is the power, right?
Yeah.
The power is not necessarily the system itself. It's what you do with the system when you have it.
Yeah.
And then I started to really feel very connected to that concept from a legacy standpoint of that's where the true opportunity lies from a legacy creation opportunity with around infinite banking, because I think that people, while we can still wake up in the morning and take breath in our lungs, what do we do with that time that we still have available to us, that can maximize opportunity, not just for ourselves but for other people as well, pre-death, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's the distinction. Like, we
Right,
think
setting up legacy now.
right. It's like we think of legacy
yeah.
as something that happens, or that something that exists after we die.
Right. You're creating it every day
But
that you interact with.
But I'm like, when you wake
Yeah.
up in the morning, you're like, what can I do today to further my legacy?
I did say in the discussion that of all the wonderful things my parents had left me, if they, or they're still alive, but that I will have left behind from them, it would be awesome if there would be an infinite banking like level of things that
man.
would have been started
Yeah,
by
hey,
them.
Who doesn't want that?
Right.
And it's funny too, because I think that there's enough horror stories about trust fund babies
Right.
and everything out there that the common, I think it might even be marketed and even an agenda by the financial system to say that money left to the next generation actually spoils
It's
them.
wasted.
Yeah, it's bad. And therefore everyone should have to create it themselves. That's the American macho way, is build
Right.
it yourself, right? So you shouldn't have that. Well, giving them the tool, giving them the resource and the abundance, if you will, that infinite banking creates naturally is really harmful if you don't focus on living that legacy. And I've heard the distinction between living a legacy, not just leaving a legacy.
Right.
And I think that when we spend the time, like you were saying, John, waking up and focusing on what is our purpose, what is our calling, and how are we impacting the people around us, and then how do we live that out? How do we live out these practices and ideals so that when we're gone, those are so instilled in the people around us by, like you mentioned, leading by example, that it doesn't matter if they get $0 or they get $50 million or they get $50 million plus $1 million a month of cash flow because we've created such a massive system. It doesn't matter, because the system, the mindset, the attitudes, the approach towards life is so infused into them that money doesn't corrupt it.
Mindset and skill set will both be there. That
Yes.
if you actually create, that's one of the beautiful things about the infinite banking concept. You aren't leaving them money, you're leaving them a system, assuming you've taken the time to teach them how to use that system. You have set them up with like just an unbelievable, and then again, that legacy can continue down the next one and the next one and the next one, and everybody learns how to use the tools. I mean, and from that land, it is kind of like leaving a ranch, because it does no good to leave somebody a ranch if you haven't taught them how to run it.
Yeah, right.
So everything about that kid's upbringing throughout the entire time is learning how to run the ranch.
Hold on, because that's important. Teaching someone how to run it, and then also making it desirable for them
Right.
to continue running it.
Right.
That's a huge distinction, because we
Yep.
see over and over. I was at this Western Sustainability Exchange event that was, exactly what it sounds like. Ranchers that are trying to make agriculture more sustainable. It's a huge problem within the ranching world, within the farming and business and real estate, all of the worlds that we live in, the various niches. People don't want to take what their parents have. Why? Because we haven't done a good enough job not just teaching them how to run it, but making sure that they want to.
Right.
Making sure that they understand the values that are present within it. And I think that if we forget about that part, it doesn't matter how much they know.
Mm-hmm.
Their heart's not in it.
Right. And that's one of the things that's interesting about like self-employed borrowers. They want to pass their business on. But if they've always stayed simply a self-employed person instead of becoming a business owner, their kids are like, dang, Dad, you missed every single game. You missed every
Right.
single everything. You missed.
That's
you
not fun.
Missed it all. I don't want that for that. And they run the other way. Now they become the one who there's no way I want to do that. But again, what do you want? Well, I wanted to build a business I can pass down to my kids. Okay, but is it even the business you want to be in?
Yeah.
And if you don't even want to be in it, you're just doing it because that's not really how they don't want to be in it either. They've seen what it's done to you.
Right.
So that whole thing of actually setting things up in a way that it's wanted.
Yeah.
I have a question, and I don't want to get too side railed here, because I think now that we're starting to talk about the whole metaphorical ranching, and now we've gone into real ranching, like that's a soft spot in my heart. So I do eventually want to kind of get into talking about this more specifically around the ranching industry, but not today. But I do want to ask you a question, Kyle, because I think I know the answer, but we'll find out. If there was a ranching family, especially the younger generation, well, doesn't matter how it's set up. Let's just say that there's a ranching operation that the family members have a policy system in place, their own banking system.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that one of the things that actually what energizes the family more is the actual banking part of their operation, and the ranching just kind of becomes the passion that feeds the banking system? So does it take the onus off the burden of ranching? Not obviously they still love and want to do the ranching because that is where their heart is. But when you actually get excited about the prospects of growing real wealth through the banking system because of the ranch, does that actually shift mindset in a way that makes it more sustainable generation to generation from a passion standpoint, not so much from a economic standpoint?
Not being a rancher, I can't speak to it from first person experience, but I don't see how it wouldn't. Anytime we remove, there's two answers to the question, in a sense that the burden almost creates the passion. I think without the struggles, we have a difficult time appreciating things. So on that sense, yes, the burden creates the passion. But if the burden is so heavy that we can only see the grind and we can't see the good in it, that becomes a problem. And I think that's what your typical centralized banking system has done, is that it has made everything, whether we're talking about ranching or business ownership or even the corporate world, it's made it difficult because it's expensive and they're profiting off of it. We're not profiting off of it. So why do I keep doing it? Well, is it just for fun? Well, eventually, if you're not able to experience life because you're so focused on moving cattle to the next pasture, or making sure that your P&Ls get processed by the end of the month, or whatever it might be, if you can't experience the fun things of life, if you can't go up to the top of Hollow Top because it's right there, if you can't go float the Smith River, or do what you want to do because because you have to do your business, then I think eventually the passion is going to disappear. And if it doesn't disappear in you, I don't know how it stays in the next generation or the following generation. If that continues, eventually it's just like, why do I live this way? I don't want to.
Yeah, that's fair. That's another. We were before we turned the camera on. We were talking about football. It made me think of where my mind went. I was thinking like when you play football, especially at it's high school and collegiate level, it doesn't really matter because it kind of all follows the same process. But the only reason why people that play football endure summer camp and the drudgery of the pain of 2-a-days and getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go run 2 miles or whatever, the only reason why you ever do that as a player is because that you get to actually suit up and play a game every Saturday, and that makes it worthwhile. So I think what you're saying is that you take the game aspect away, that's the reward.
Right.
The reward is getting to actually go out and enjoy and apply your skill and your mindset, your toughness or whatever, and put it on display and go have fun and have an outcome. and go, wow, all of that hard work was worth it. And I think that what you're saying is in the ranching industry, or in really any industry. I mean, we don't have to get too fixated on ranching, but it's one in particular that comes with a lot of additional hardships. That if it was only about the hardships, without getting to play the game on the weekend, you probably wouldn't want to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, from our experience of any of the ranchers we know, the hardships are that make it worth it are the things like the hard days out in the weather or having to deal with Mother Nature. The things that make it go, oh my God, I just can't do it anymore is the paying the bank. You know, we have our line of credit and it seems like you never get ahead and now you're asking for more. That's the part that's just no fun. And if there's a way around that suddenly generations can take care of that part themselves.
And I think that's where infinite banking has an awesome opportunity with ranching in particular is, there's different ways of applying banking in every single niche, right? And I think that what's important to recognize is, whether you're a rancher, a business owner, a real estate investor, whatever it might be, you know how to make money. So use your banking system to do that. So if you're ranching, maybe you're not putting the money into new investments that are generating 25% cash on cash in year one and all of that stuff. Maybe you're using that money to buy out of your operational loan that you're spending 8% on every single year. So maybe you're only profiting 2 or 5%. Well, what does it take to become profitable in that situation? You might grow wealth a little bit slower than someone at 25% in their industry, but who cares, right? The point is that we are moving forward every single time, and we can utilize funds that we have guaranteed contractual unilateral control over and start playing banker. I think where people get scared or confused is that banking seems complicated, and it's really not. It's a cool thing is Nelson broke it down in 92 pages in one book.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. It's just that our system, our monetary system, I should say, like Wall Street, seems to make it complicated so that they get to stay in the driver's seat with banking. And a lot of the things that you were mentioning that ranchers have a hard time with paying the banker. Well, if they become the banker, maybe that's fun.
Right.
Maybe you actually enjoy paying the banker if that's you.
Yeah.
Or if that's a trust that you are in control over.
Yeah.
Or, there's so many beautiful ways to apply it. And it's funny because some people ask me, well, how should I do this? I don't know. I think that
Right.
You just haven't explored that enough. That you haven't taken the time to imagine that enough. So
Cash and cash flow, I mean, whether it's a business or an individual, that is what drives everything. And anytime you're looking at cash and cash flow, there are 4 decisions to make: spend, invest, borrow, or pay back debt. And so as you're sitting there trying to figure out between those 4, the more you have control over all of those facets, the spending, the borrowing, that falls way more into the, this has just made the game more fun, because now whether I'm borrowing, it's still from my bank, and therefore there's still something coming back to me.
what if investing was the same as
Exactly.
paying off debt?
Paying off your debt,
and
exactly.
borrowing
Yep.
and spending.
Yeah.
Like if it's
Yep.
all the same thing,
Yep.
suddenly, just another point is we put our money in so many different ways,
Yeah.
so many different places, and it's just confusing and it's not efficient. Well, if
Yep.
we lump all those things together and have one funnel that they run through, it could be profitable.
One cash flowing system. Yep.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Heaven forbid.
I had a conversation yesterday with the ideal person, 30-year-old, responsible young man, got his act together, has a great future ahead of him, young family, 2 young kids, beautiful wife, just checking all the boxes, and very knowledgeable. He's done a lot of research and intelligent, but he, I didn't say this to him, but I was thinking it. I feel like, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm saying this wrong, or talking in a turn, but what I was hearing him say was that he very conventionally learned how to separate or silo his current lifestyle with his future lifestyle. And so what he's done is he's set up like a trust with investments, and he's feeding into the 401k, and he's doing all the things for the future. And therefore he is now figuring out from a cash flow standpoint how to establish and maintain a lifestyle today. And what was very interesting to me was that there was a delineation, a separation in his mind between how he chose to use his money. I'm going to use my money either for tomorrow, or I'm going to use my money for today. And I made the comment to him about, well, what if you could use your money today in a way that actually makes your tomorrow even better?
Right.
And it was like, it was like there was a like at the wall, right, that came down, and because I think that the people that become very defensive over what they want to protect, what they have already established, and it's hard for them to wrap their brain around the fact that that there's a rational self-interest for them to be able to live today in a way that actually benefits them at an individual level, but that decision making actually also builds a greater legacy and future.
Well, I would say it's a difference in owning a system and trying to use a system.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I would also go back to the question, how many pools of water are there in the world? How many bodies of water? There's one. And if you're going to say that the rainfall in the Amazon is not connected to Lake Tahoe in California, you're wrong. Because we know that water has its own cycle and it goes everywhere. It's all connected, and money's no different. Money has to move. Money has to be in flow. Otherwise it dies, right? Same thing with water. If it stops moving, stagnant, it dies. It's very easy for us, and what we're taught, you mentioned conventional wisdom, is that we start to separate and say there's a pool for the future and a pool for the present, and we do not understand that they are in fact connected. And as long as we keep them separate, we remove their potential energy. We remove their power. If we can understand how to bring them together and start, like you said, practice making decisions that empower us to be better stewards and prepare for the future, that's a juggernaut. You can't stop that.
Right. Well, and also on that, I mean, you think you're putting it in your pool for the future, but it's not like it's sitting there. Somebody else is using velocity of money. Yeah, somebody's using your money. Yeah. So if it's being used, which is ultimately how you see it growing, why don't you want to use it? Like, somebody's using your money right now.
Because that's scary, and I don't want to think about it.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to.
Yep. Which, again, comes back to the whole pioneering mindset of ultimately our audience of the people who are going to be attracted to this are the ones who go, I get it. I do want a better way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm okay with it being different.
Yeah.
I can be comfortable with that if I learn enough.
I don't remember who said it, but it was a quote that the light bulb wasn't invented by continuing to improve the candle.
Right.
You got to think different.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It is a good one. Yeah. Might be a good one to stop on.
I mean, that whole concept of like an outside the box, world of, I guess the only other thing that I would say is potentially just to get into the idea, if there's anything else you like from your standpoint of what you want to add, knowing that this show was kind of focused on legacy, of giving a little more than a teaser of how IBC can ultimately do that for people.
Me? Add?
Yeah.
Oh.
You're the IBC.
You are the IBC guy.
I was thinking that you were asking John a question.
No.
No.
Oh, that's a good question. Infinite banking is unique in that it is in your power. I can't get away from Nelson. Like there's another book, one of my mentors, Jim Oliver, wrote. It's called Ownership. Fantastic. I can't get away from becoming your own banker though. Just the title in it, becoming. Like, you don't become, it's becoming.
Right.
Right. It's this never-ending iterative process, and when you embrace that, you can't help but alter the destiny in a good way for your future. You can't help but set up a legacy. And I think there's two ways that happens. The first one is the mindset that you continually adapt, the habits that you adapt. And then because you've adapted those mindset and habits, like you said, mindset, skill set, you go acquire cash flowing assets. That might be a 7% ROI on an annual basis to a regenerative farm. You're doing a hard money loan to somebody and just helping them get out of the system that they've been in. It might be a 25% cash on cash for a 5-story apartment complex. It might be, you name it. There could be anything, and it might be a 50%, 100%. You can't put limits on what bankers do. That's why it's called the infinite banking concept, because there's really unlimited possibilities to go put money into motion. But as you do that, you gain more and more cash flowing assets. And so for one, you're creating a legacy by adopting the habits and living those habits out. You're leading by example. And then two, you're creating a cash flowing system that allows your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids to build a life without being encumbered by the usurious nature of our banking system. I don't like our banking system. I grew up in it. I hate it.
Oh, it's almost like we're like, there's a brainwave connection between us right now, because where my mind was going is exactly where you just went. Because I want to make another point or comment before I stop recording, that you just touched on, the whole banking, like
Go for it.
The central banking system that we have all grown up and lived under. So one of the things, this is one of the other things that came up in conversation yesterday is, I saw this firsthand, by being behind the curtain of the banking system when I was on board of directors for a bank, local
credit
bank,
union?
Credit union, yeah, a lending institution.
Right.
And what's interesting is about how banks have really shifted towards sort of consumer-oriented loans. And when you understand how banks make money, or create money out of thin air, essentially, I mean, it's true. Like from a ledger accounting, actuary standpoint,
Arbitrage.
it's not just that.
Yep.
It's beyond fractional reserve banking.
Yeah.
There actually is credit creation that occurs every time when a bank takes deposits. They have the ability to essentially turn around and create money out of thin air for lending purposes. And when the lending is done for consumption purposes, buy a new four-wheeler, a new RV camper, whatever, something that is not used for productive purposes, what it does is it effectively pumps more money into the banking system, which then creates an inflationary effect on our dollar. Right, so the Federal Reserve itself probably is only responsible for, a fraction of the amount of credit created in our country on a daily basis. It's the system itself that propagates that. Mm-hmm. But when banks can choose to, if banks were more decentralized, not deregulated, because there's a difference there, but if they were more decentralized, to the point where there were more smaller community-oriented banks where they could make loans in the community that they exist in for productive purposes, allowing new businesses to be established, allowing more production to occur that builds an economy, a local economy. It negates that inflationary effect or that impact. So the problem is that is not what our banking system is doing now, and because they benefit the financialization of our monetary system, they benefit from that, from the opposite of that happening. So the thing I love about what you're doing and helping people from an infinite banking standpoint is when people set themselves up with their own banking policies and they can then choose to do. You mentioned a few different examples of, like, I could lend for a regenerative farming business, or I can, or like when that money is put back into circulation for productive purposes of that is controlled at the individual level, that helps curb and control the inflationary effect of our economy as a country, and it is an indirect effect or positive effect or impact that we all get to benefit from, and which I think is really important to note or to mention. And the other thing is that, going back to the whole legacy concept, is, okay, you're the one that has the policy and you're the one making the loan. You're the one that stands to benefit from the interest payments collected on that loan.
Right.
So that is, again, it's a rational, self-interested decision. But by you doing that, you're not only curbing the inflationary effect on a macro level, but you are building your own legacy on a micro level. So you're killing multiple birds with one stone. It's just, it blows my mind. The magnitude and the power and the effect of what we're talking about is so awesome, and so few people understand it and are aware of it and get it. And I really hope that what we're talking about on the show will start to change a lot of minds and change a lot of hearts and get people to start thinking different and acting differently. And it, that's to me, that is a big goal of why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, John, and it's interesting that you say all that, because it actually reminded me of a client that just recently said, hey, I don't want anything to do with infinite banking. They hadn't got their policy yet. We'd have a few meetings, and they were excited, and then suddenly they're like, we're offboarding. Why? The reason was because of what you were just saying. Like, they don't understand the magnitude of what can happen when you're in control of the banking function. They see what we're taught to see as an investment. But this isn't an investment. This is banking.
Right.
And if you are going to try to compare an apple to an orange, I'm sorry, but you're going to be disappointed when you bite into the other one. Like,
right.
It's either way. If you're expecting an apple and you bite into an orange, you're not going to be happy. If you're expecting an orange and you bite into an apple, you're not going to be happy. So understanding what you're dealing with is hugely critical. And that goes back to the mindset thing, is where are you getting your information? How deeply do you know what you're doing? Because if you don't do it.
What's funny about that is very much of where every time with the all-in-one loan, what people expect, because they want it to work like they expect a mortgage. It's what people have always had.
Right.
And so one of the things with the light bulb and the candle, one of our things is if people would have asked, if Ford would have gone out and asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Right.
And if Chris George would have gone out and asked people what they wanted, they would have said, well, lower rates, of course, on my mortgage. But a 30-year mortgage, even at a low rate, is still a really expensive mortgage. Mm-hmm. And so when all of a sudden you rethink it, but it's not a mortgage, like, you need to let go of that concept that it's a 30-year mortgage, that what's my rate? That's the biggest part of it, because 3 sides to any equation when it comes to math. And so that concept is it's why I laugh, because anytime I have somebody interested in it, I love it because I get energized by it, but I know it's going to be a significantly longer process with that person than the person who's just is going to come in for an FHA loan, or the first time, and whatever. Here's my 5% down and help me buy a house. I'm like, okay, I'm happy to get you through things. This is going to be pretty quick and easy for me. The mindset shift on the other.
Oh, it's where you spend most of the time.
Because all of a sudden it's like, but it's entirely different. You have to understand Where are you wasting dollars?
Yeah.
It's all about, it's not taking your investment money, it's using your grocery money, because you need your grocery money yet. So put it to work for you
Yeah.
until you actually need it. And so adding that banking component into all those idle dollars that are sitting there doing absolutely nothing for you. But that thing about it's somehow trying to get around to where the actual, you have to change your understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think what you're saying, Karen, is that the interesting thing to tie all this together in a neat bow is while you deal with mortgages and Kyle deals with the infinite banking concept, you're both in the same line of work. You're in the same business,
Yeah.
right? You're
Trying to help people cash flow better.
Well, it's not just it's even more important than that. It's bigger than that. It's all about, it really all goes back to where this whole conversation started, which is the whole mindset aspect, and understanding that mindset is paramount, but it's all about understanding the structure, whether it's dealing with your home ownership or your quote unquote investments or banking function in your life. But those things equal sign control. And the question becomes, is it your control or is it somebody else's control? And sadly, most of us are dead fish.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is resuscitate as many of those little fishies as possible,
Get them.
bring them back to life and get them swimming on their own so they can start singing like, what's the
Nemo.
Is that Nemo?
Dory's the
Well, I
singer.
don't-
Just keep swimming. Yeah.
Yeah,
don't
just
know.
keep swimming.
Yeah, but I love your passion and enthusiasm for just understanding the magnitude of all of this is kind of inspiring even for me. We say frequently that infinite banking is caught more than it's taught. And as many times as we've had these conversations with this particular person, he didn't catch it. He said, "I'm done. I don't want to do it." And I think there's a certain amount of dead fish that don't want to be dead. That they know they're going the wrong direction. They know they're dying, but they don't want to actually die. So how do we find those people and help them see the abundance that can happen by swimming upstream? That's
Yeah, and it takes all kinds. I mean, I'll throw our show concept back into the fold here, talking about the new frontier. And to me, talk about a passion. I have a very strong passion for that concept, not because it's my creation, but because in my mind, anyway, I didn't create anything. Still working on that, but no, because it takes all kinds. And I think the thing is that there's going to be a plethora of different people that tune into the show, and a lot of different things are going to happen in their experience and journey with it. There will be people that will ride it to the end, to where they actually are benefiting from what we're trying to share with them and help educate them around. But there is a big swath of people between the people that will never get off of the starting block, right? They won't leave comfort zone, right? Comfort and convenience is so tempting. It's so desirable that it's very hard to get people to move into a position of a little bit more responsibility and what is required to actually change circumstance. But then, so that's the starting point. You look at the end point, which is the people that actually cross the finish line. They're on their way to get to Oregon, part of the Oregon Trail, but they end up in Montana, and they all of a sudden they have their Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, whatever that represents to them. They made it, right? They succeeded, they survived. And then there's everybody in between that, that falls away, falls apart, makes bad choices, isn't cut out for the journey. And we just have to understand that is just going to be, I think, part of the the natural process of, of what happens in this attempt. There's going to be, I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, for every 100 people that start this journey with us, what's the percentage of ones that actually make it,
Yeah.
To their Yellowstone Dutton Ranch? I don't know, but I hope it's higher than I want to believe it is.
It is fun
Never
though.
be
I mean,
higher than you want to believe it is.
Would you say better be?
It will never be.
right?
Never
You have
believe.
to believe high
Our belief
first.
determines everything.
Yeah.
Think and grow rich, man. I mean, you
Right.
can't get past that.
I love that. I mean, it is true. Like, look at the Oregon Trail and the people who did it. I love how diverse it was. I mean, that when you look at just the people from freed slaves to, disillusioned soldiers to, I mean, everything in the world that was going, I just simply want a better life. And the number of people that I believe right now, when you're sitting there, who are just going, I'm just done with this. I want a better life. That, if we can all help them find that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I think is so much fun about teaching people that anything, when they hear it, they catch it, right? The seed that was planted today might take 3 years to germinate, but someday it probably will. And they have caught it at that point, And so when you plant that little seed, you might not see it, but someday all of a sudden something will come back and they'll go, I'm going to revisit this.
Right.
And then next thing you know, they're going, hey, that thing, I need to learn more.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Do you all right, we're going to say goodbye. But before we do, is there anything in particular that you would like to add that we haven't talked about or touched on around specifically the concept of legacy? Like I don't want you to walk out of here and go, man, I wish I had said this.
No, usually what happens is my wife walks out of here and says, man, I wish he wouldn't have said this. So I guess in closing, I would just say, make yourself uncomfortable every single day. Whether that's saying 2 more words, saying 2 less words, whatever it might be, get uncomfortable every single day. Because as long as you stay in your comfort zone, you're never, ever, ever going to start thinking differently.
That reminds me of our good buddy Kale. Remember what he said?
Do something that scares you to death every day.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
What's my favorite newest Todd quote? That ignorance lives at the boundary of knowledge.
ignorant?
Something about that.
You can't ask someone else what your favorite new quote is.
I know, right?
That doesn't make sense.
Gosh, I read it all the time. It's on my thing, but I'm not going to get it right. At the boundary of your knowledge is always ignorance. So no matter how big you make your bubble, your box, whatever, outside of that still lies all the things you don't know. But the more you accept that, the more you get excited about just continuing to push the boundaries and learn, because ultimately, what are we here for other than learning?
Well, I think the key to Kyle with what we're trying to do here, what's really going to be important as we grow forward is figuring out how to give people the opportunity to engage.
Well, ask your question.
My question.
Yeah, of that for the audience of
Okay.
what do they have for their legacy?
But let me say this before I ask my
Okay,
question.
sorry.
So that's okay. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that, so what I want to really encourage people to do that hear this, I don't want them, the last thing I want us to do is to be, 3 additional, talking bobbleheads, because, everybody has that opportunity to tune into, random bobbleheads that can voice their
Yeah, of course.
their expertise and opinion on things. So I think the key is to really help people say, I do feel seed is planted. I need a little bit of water here, help me water it. So I think that the opportunity needs to be where people can engage with us around this table. And I think a starting point is just, hey, if you've got a burning question, or if we said something that, that you don't understand, or that you want to remark on or challenge or push back on, or I want people to know that they have that opportunity to do that, because eventually what I would like to be able to do is bring those voices and those questions and comments and concerns into the fold, because I think that's that reflection, that feedback from the audience is going to be very telling on how effective we're being in sharing the information. And I'd almost rather actually a lot of the conversation month to month be more driven by the audience's participation.
And hearing their stories. And
what
they want to know. Scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, if we got to the point where we could sit here and spend a whole show drinking some of Willie Distillery's finest spirit of the month, answering questions, audience's questions, members' questions, that'd be cool. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be more things. I've got an idea I'm going to share with you off camera that I think will be a kind of good idea. And that might also help connect people into we want to invite people to join our wagon train, right? Like we're getting ready to leave Fort Worth, Texas, and head to Oregon, and we want people to come along that want to come along, but we got to teach them and show them how they can do that.
Cool.
So, thank you. She wants me to ask this question.
Well, you better ask.
This is the parting question. This is the legacy challenge, and this is for the listeners themselves, the members. What are 3 things that your kids will inherit, and how many of them are systems, not stuff? So, of course, just a quick reminder, stuff equals the tangibles, the assets that make up your estate. The systems are the things that are your intangibles, like knowledge, wisdom, principles.
Systems. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are 3 things that your kids will inherit, and how many of them are systems, all the good intangible stuff like knowledge, wisdom, and principles, and how many of them, or how much of it is stuff, or specifically not stuff, meaning don't really care about necessarily what makes up your estate or those assets, those listed assets. It's more important to know what the systems are. Because I think if you ask people that question, they have to start thinking about that.
What am I leaving?
What am I actually leaving, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's good.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
You're going to come back next month?
What are you going to have to drink?
Now I gotta run back to Montana. I had my